Hello, my name is Sally Gaines, and I am a Program Development Specialist with the Children's Division. Today, we're going to talk about 3 different post-secondary financial assistance programs for youth in foster care: the ETV, tuition waiver, and the CCE. We're fortunate to have different options for a career path in Missouri, and we like to say that there's something for everyone. The first program we're going to talk about is the Educational Training Voucher Program. This slide gives some background of this federal program. Over the years, various legislation has impacted this program, with the latest being the Families First legislation passed by President Trump in 2018. And this law expanded the eligibility for this program. For ETV, youth are eligible if they have graduated, are currently in foster care, adopted or obtained legal guardianship after age 16, or left care after 18. Youth can receive funds up to age 26 for a maximum of 5 years. If a youth moves to Missouri from another state, they're eligible if they meet Missouri's criteria and vice versa, as long as they did not move to the other state for the purpose of attending school. Then a youth must apply in the home state for funding. We're able to fund all eligible youth in Missouri, and the average amount of support is $3,000. However, youth can receive up to $5,000 a year. The funding is meant to be used in conjunction with other financial assistance programs, such as Pell, scholarships, and the A+ program. This is a list of what the funds can be used for. In Missouri, the majority of funds are used for tuition, 28%, transportation, 14%, living expenses, 24%, and housing at 17%. The funding will not be awarded for more than it costs a young person to attend school. It can be used for health insurance, but in Missouri, youth who have exited care after age 18 do have health insurance up to age 26, including out-of-state youth. Youth must demonstrate academic success or motivation in school to continue receiving funds, and this is generally a C average. If a youth is attending a program which does not use grades to document progress, the youth must provide a letter from the program verifying the youth is making satisfactory progress. Children's Division requires all youth applying for ETV to submit a copy of the financial aid letter from their chosen school, providing all other financial aid awarded. The application and all record keeping is online and available to appropriate state staff for oversight purposes. The website allows CD to monitor the youth's application paperwork at each step of the process. Foster Care to Success looks at every ETV applicant individually and assesses their tuition need and cost of daily living. Each student gets the ETV disbursement which best suits their needs. All first-year students are required to participate in an individualized budget session prior to receiving ETV funding in the fall and spring semester. And Foster Care to Success has a portal for Missouri public colleges and universities to make the process for school reporting on financial aid for ETV and Missouri Reach students easier. This allows for reporting online versus faxing paperwork. So as soon as the student applies, Foster Care Success can have their information, and they are always training and retraining colleges on how to update those records. Now we're going to talk about our state-funded program, the Missouri Reach Tuition Waiver, and this program fully pays for all tuition at a state public institution for youth who are in foster care in Missouri. The money is dependent annually for budget appropriations and was first funded in 2011 in the amount of $188,000. So this funds between 18 to 25 youth, depending on the cost of the school that the youth is attending. And the criteria for this program is based on statute, and it is a little bit different from the ETV requirements. This program also has a give back component, and a student must complete 100 hours of community service or an internship. And what is acceptable for meeting this criteria was established at the onset, and at the end of this presentation, I'll give a link to our webpage which lists these different internships and community service opportunities. We do have priority criteria established for this program, as it's a limited pool of money. It doesn't mean that all eligible youth cannot apply. It only means that if if we do need to use the criteria to use the funding, we will use this to establish who the funding goes to. And we do typically give this to upperclassmen, as we want to give it to those who are serious. As a student, as many freshmen do not return and can already get full funding for a 2-year degree via our ETV program, which we just discussed earlier in this presentation. Our third and most recent program is the Missouri Credential Completion and Employment Program, which we refer to as the CCE program. And it is a short-term financial assistance program to assist youth in obtaining a credential through a certification program. And this program is funded at $450,000. These funds can be used for 1 year only for a 9-month or less credential program and provide up to $8,000 to assist with youth with the cost of the program and living. This slide spells out a little more of the criteria. This program has been our most underutilized, in part because it's our newest and because youth participating in this program have many challenges. This may not be the first program that they've participated in, so they may owe money to a community college or have a federal student loan debt. Transportation is a barrier for the youth, and they also may have an unplanned pregnancy or a child support order, which they have to comply with, so they need to work, and going to school is difficult for them. These programs are also very time-intensive for young people. This slide has the link for where young people can make application, and this is really all you need to know. If you take only one thing away from today, it's this. You do not have to determine eligibility. Children's Division will do that. All you have to remember is where to direct young people to apply. Many people contact us and they're not eligible, but we like to be on the safe side and determine if they are. With our post-secondary financial assistance program, many Missouri students can graduate without incurring debt. It's important when working with youth to make sure that they are held being very intentional in their choice of school and career path, so they do not incur debt with no certification or degree. We really recommend that youth avoid for-profit schools for the reasons on this slide. We also advise students not to attend online schools, as students don't form connections and they really do need the assistance of being in person. The last several slides I'm going to go over very quickly, and they can be used for reference later. This slide is just provide some statistics of the youth that we're serving. And the next couple of slides provide some barriers youth have for post-secondary success. On this slide, we have some recommendations for working with youth. And I just want to point out that many youth have said that just knowing that they can go to college financially is encouraging and gives them a little bit of incentive to work a little bit harder to prepare for college. And these are just some additional recommendations for future reference. And there are also several other services available for youth to help them succeed in their educational pursuits. Youth who have left Children's Division custody 30 days prior to their 18th birthday are eligible for health care coverage up to age 26. Youth who left care after age 17 and are not yet 21 may come back into care, and we call this the reentry law. And then we also have a program called CHAFE that is available for youth up to age 23 if they left care after 18, and it is life skills services. It can also be cash assistance if a young person needs something to assist them with their life skills. If they own a vehicle and they have a flat tire and they just need a little bit of help getting that tire fixed, this is something that our CHAFE funds can be used for. And then I have a couple of links there that you can refer to that we keep up to date that show other services available for youth if you're helping them. And we also have a new program which provides housing vouchers for any homeless youth that were in foster care if you should encounter someone who's struggling with that. These are our resources, and the information for this presentation is contained on these websites, eligibility criteria, as well as this blueprint for change, which talks about the barriers and recommendations. And then this is my contact information. And I've also included where we will always have, if I was no longer working for the Children's Division, you could go to the website for additional help and support, and you would always be able to find the name of someone who would be able to assist you. And that additional help and support is even broken down by counties. Thank you very much. And now we're going to turn it over to Kelly.
Hi, everyone. This is Kelly Evans. I am the Associate Director of Financial Aid at Missouri State University. And what I'm going to talk about today is how colleges and universities can help those students who are homeless, at risk of homelessness, and in different situations that may not fall into the norm. The few things that I want to do is I want to define who an independent student is and who they aren't, the different classifications that go with homelessness, what documentation can be used, if documentation isn't available, what you can do, and then what to do if the student doesn't fall into any of the regular situations. So who is independent? Based on the FAFSA and the Department of Education's guidelines, these are the things that make a student independent. They have to be 24 or older by January 1st of the school year that they are applying for. They have to be married or separated but not divorced. They have to be working on a master's or a doctorate degree. They have to have a child that they provide at least 51% of their support to. They have to have dependents other than children or spouse who are living with the student, and they're providing more than half of their support as well. If they're in active military duty, a veteran, if they have since turning 13, if their parents were deceased, in foster care, or was a ward or dependent of the court, if they are an emancipated minor or in a legal guardianship as determined by a court. So that's not if it's just somebody is acting as guardian. And then a student is an unaccompanied youth who is homeless or self-supporting and at risk of being homeless. And that last group is the group that we're really going to focus on. So who's not independent? This is probably one of the biggest confusing points for most parents and students. Students whose parents do not claim them on their taxes. There are plenty of situations where students may make enough money that their parents don't claim them on the taxes. In the case of divorced parents, you may have one parent who gets to claim them 1 year and the other parent claims them the other year. That has no bearing on their dependency status. Students whose parents don't want to provide financial support for their students' college, they are not considered independent. That is a choice. It comes down to who is ultimately responsible for that student. And it comes down to, is it the parents and the family, or is it the taxpayer? And then the student does not meet any of the criteria on the previous slide. If they don't meet any of that criteria, they're not independent. Or if the student lives with somebody other than the parent or claims they have a legal guardian, but there is no court documentation. If the parents are still in the picture, but they live with somebody else, that may be another conversation, and we'll kind of address that a little bit later. But that kind of gives you an idea of who's not independent. So when we're looking at students who are marking on their FAFSA that they are homeless or at risk of homelessness, we're looking at a couple of things. So one, they need to be under the age of 24, and they have to be an unaccompanied youth who is homeless, and we'll kind of go over what homeless means, or they're an unaccompanied youth who is self-supporting and at risk of being homeless. So they may be without parents, they're making their own money, they're providing their own support. However, they are at risk of being homeless. So we'll kind of go over that a little bit more. Our definitions, a youth is anybody under the age of 24 as far as the financial aid portion of this goes. Of course, we understand that they are adults. However, in the eyes of the Department of Education and the federal government, for FAFSA purposes, they have to be under the age of 24 to be considered youth. Unaccompanied means that they are not living in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. Homelessness and at risk of homelessness can cover a myriad of things. So the student could be living with someone other than their parent because they have nowhere else to go. Maybe they've had a falling out with their parents. If they're living in emergency or transitional shelter, so So we're talking about either FEMA housing or in the next point, student living in substandard housing. So a shelter where utilities are shut off, if they're living in a motel. And I know that that comes into play, especially in communities where tourism is high, or any public place not designed for people to live in. And then if the student lives in a campus residence hall, would they meet one of the above if unable to continue living in the residence hall? So if they had to go home at Christmas when the residence halls shut down, where would they go? Would they have somewhere to go to? And that's what we're looking at when we're looking at who is homeless or at risk of homelessness. When you think of couch surfing, anything like that, that would be considered at risk of homelessness and homeless. What documentation a student may need, and I say may because it is always going to be dependent on the student's situation. So if they're coming straight from high school into college, the high school or high school district homeless liaison, so your McKinney-Vento liaison, they can provide us documentation, and that will serve as their documentation for that year. The problem with that is it is only good for that year. After that, they can't get another letter from the liaison. They need to have additional documentation from an emergency shelter, transitional housing program, director of a runaway or homeless youth program, transitional living program. And I want to be clear, the second 2 points, some organizations require the student to be receiving their services in order for them to provide documentation. Not everyone is like that. It's just different for every single situation. So sometimes the student is just not able to secure any documentation. That could be for any number of reasons. They may not be utilizing services. They may not have any third-party corroboration. They may not have identified as homeless while in high school, or if they weren't designated as homeless during high school, so the McKinney-Vento liaison can't write a letter. There are lots of different situations where they can find themselves with a really difficult kind of uphill battle with that. First and foremost, it's really important that you contact the financial aid office at the college that the student will be attending. So if they are attending more than one or considering more than one, they'll need to contact all of them because we're all going to have our different policies and our different procedures. They're all going to be similar, but they are not going to be the same. Secondly, and probably I would do this hands down anyway, is to request an appointment with a financial aid counselor or an advisor that oversees these situations. We have a specific counselor in our office that specifically works with this population of students. So he is so well versed in this information that he can sit down, have a conversation, and then what we do, and most schools will do, is we have a form. We sit down, we have that conversation with the student, and we fill out that form while we're meeting with them to determine if they're eligible or not. So that may be asking the student about their living situation. It may be talking to that student about the parental situation and what's going on there, and is there a legal guardianship, and all of that information. So those are the things that we're going to look at when they contact our office. But it's really, really important that the student does contact our office. I know it can seem scary, but it is really important because we need to know so that we can best serve the students. We're always going to have those situations where there's a student who doesn't fall into any of the previous situations. Maybe they live with their parent or step parent, and there's abuse or neglect. You as a high school counselor, a lot of times know about those situations. And so we do have some safety measures put in place for them. So if they don't fall into one of those previous situations, they may be able to become an independent student for other reasons. And we do, some people call it professional judgment. Some people call it special circumstance. We call it an independent status review. they're going to go through this process, and we're going to explain to them what type of information is needed. So kind of the two most common situations that we run into is abuse and or neglect. So maybe the student is living in the house, but it is extremely abusive. Maybe the parent is physically there, but not mentally there, as far as for support or anything like that. We have lots of students who may have one parent or both that are incarcerated. So those are both situations where we're going to have to review those situations. And it's really important that the student comes and talks to us. And they will need to talk to us to determine which situation is going to be the right one for them. So students who check the box, homeless, at risk of homelessness, that's going to fall into those previous examples where they can provide documentation from shelters, from McKinney-Vento liaisons, all of that. These situations, the student may come back to you and say, hey, you know about my situation. Can you please write a letter to explain what my situation was? So say there is abuse or neglect. That's an excellent opportunity for you to be able to be an advocate for that student in that situation. And we see a lot of that where we get letters from high school teachers, counselors, principals, all sorts of people. And usually we're looking for third-party documentation. So that could be anybody in their educational background. It could be somebody in a church background, anybody kind of who is outside of the family who understands the situation and knows what's going on. So those are the things that we're looking for when we're looking at these students who are really some at-risk populations and trying to get them into college and through college. Now, once they're here, of course, at a university, we are more than happy to provide other services to them and get them in touch with people who can assist them. But it is really important that they do start out by contacting each office so that they know what direction they need to be going and how we can be of the best help. So here's my contact information. Feel free to email me if you have any questions or if you want a copy of kind of what we do as far as determination for homeless or at risk of homelessness. And have a great day.